Hello everyone, to our alumni, our friends, and all the supporters of the University of Evansville. Welcome to a conversation with Chris. I'm Chris Pietruszkiewicz, the president of the University of Evansville, and I'm delighted that David Morkal is with us, a 1981 graduate from our theater department who's been with the Fire Department of New York for the last 30 years or so and is in town to do the keynote address for the Southwestern Indiana Chamber of Commerce that he did on Thursday night. So David, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thanks. It's really great to be back. I love this space. I love Shanklin Theater. I love being back here. You know, Evansville has a lot of memories and some great times here in the city.
Well, when you left here, you were a theater major.
Yep.
And you've now been with the New York Fire Department, Department in New York for the last 30 years.
30 years.
But, so coming back to the University of Evansville and being on Shanklin stage.
Yeah.
How does that relate to you?
It feels like home. It feels like home. It's, it's my journey, started here. So it's coming back to my roots. And even though I'm not in theater, haven't been in theater for 30 years, I still love theater. And I still, everything that I learned here and the experiences that I had here, I carry with me as a firefighter and as a chief. Those are, it's defined who I would be. The 4 years that I was here and the year that I came back to teach are the foundation of how I got to where I am.
Well, let's start at the beginning. So, well, not so far in the beginning.
Yeah, right. I was born in London, England. No.
The beginning at the university.
Yeah.
So how did you get here? How did you decide on the university?
Let's go back 3 years before I started here, because I was in Kokomo, Indiana. My dad was in the Air Force. We moved every 4 years, and we settled at Grissom Air Force Base for his last 4 years. And as a sophomore in high school, I was trying to figure out, well, how do I kind of fit in? I weighed 105 pounds. Football wasn't going to be the game. And
me either.
Yeah, right. So I was like 105 pounds, 105-pound weight class. That seems to match. So I was on a wrestling team, not very good. And we went into the auditorium to watch the auditions for the play. And it was like, hanging out in the back, chattering, and the drama teacher turned and said, if you're in here, you're auditioning, and kicked us up on the stage and made us audition. And I ended up with 5 or 4 bit parts in the play. That was the beginning. It just so happened she's a native of Evansville. And when I started looking at theaters or schools to study theater, she said, University of Evansville, no question. And so this is where I came.
So who did you talk to at the university? Was it John David? I don't remember talking to John David until I got here. It was more we just applied and got in. So what do you remember about your time here, particularly in theater?
Oh, well, it was, I remember my freshman year, I came as an actor, and I was like, I was going to be an actor. Didn't matter that I was throwing up backstage because I couldn't remember my lines, but that's what I was going to do. And I was stressed and I couldn't, did what I did, but I was also working in the shop as part of as the practicum. And Todd Engel was the technical director. And within a couple months, he says, do you want a paid assistantship to work in the shop? I was like, really? You're going to pay me for doing what I'm doing already? It's like, yeah.
Sounds like a good deal, right?
Let me think about that for 2 seconds. And I started working in the shop more. And that transitioned me to technical theater and out of acting, which I'm sure John David and Dudley Thomas were very happy about, because they didn't have to oh God, what are we going to do with Dave, because he can't act. So I went into technical theater, but then my sophomore year, Joe Flauto came here, and he changed my life.
How so?
He recognized something, either talent or skill or perseverance or something, tenacity, and he became my mentor for the next 3 years.
All those are good qualities, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think so.
I think that's what New York likes about you.
Yeah. So So he became my mentor through the next 3 years, and we became colleagues when I came back to teach here, and at Hope Summer Repertory Theater, and friends since then.
So after you graduated from here,
Yeah.
I do want to ask you at some point about how you transitioned from theater to the fire department in New York.
Good.
But let's do first.
Yeah.
So what happened after you graduated here? You came back to teach, but what happened next?
So I graduated here. I worked at the Utah Shakespeare Festival doing technical theater. And then I went to University of Georgia for a year to work on my master's degree. That lasted for a year, and I mean, the truth, the quality of the theater here was beyond what they were doing there. So I was like, yeah, I'm done. So
We like to hear that.
it was, yeah. I could show you, but yeah. So anyhow, I came back here. I actually worked at the Evansville Civic Theater for a year as their designer and technical director. And then in the summers, I was at Hope Summer Repertory Theater. Then I came back here and taught. And I also worked at the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival in Cleveland, Ohio, after Georgia. And I came back here and taught for a year. And my recollection is John David actually asked me to stay another year, but I felt like it was time for me to leave the nest. And so I went to teach at Western Michigan University, but the summer before I went to between here and Western Michigan University, I met my wife to be at Hope Summer Repertory Theater. And she was from New York, and so I moved to New York back to New York and did theater there. New York Shakespeare Festival, Second Stage, a couple industrial jobs, and landed at a small scene shop on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. But then the collaboration, the teamwork, the participation in how we're going to affect society that I learned here wasn't happening there for me as a technical director. I was just a carpenter getting paid $10 an hour, working 60 hours a week, and I was like, I was looking for something
Not making a
different.
difference.
What's that?
Not making a difference.
Not making a difference. We would build something and they'd throw it out, or the designer come in and say, no, that's not what I want, throw it out. And so I was like, yeah, what am I doing here?
So how is it coming back here as a teacher, as a professor, after having been a student and then being colleagues with your former professors?
Yeah, that was, it was pretty interesting. I mean, Joe and I had worked at Hope Summer Repertory Theater the summer before together, and coming back and just learning and trying to teach myself or figure out how to teach. I could build the sets, and Joe and I could work together, but that interaction with the students was different because I wasn't that much older than them. So trying to figure that out was challenging. And we did some incredible stuff that year, I think. I mean, my memory was pretty dynamic stuff. I can't remember when we did Cabaret, but it was just, to me, mind-blowing, the set. So we did some great stuff that year, and it was exhausting, though.
You think that was your favorite set, Cabaret?
I would say yes. That was, and I remember Joe going over to Joe's place to look at the design, and he said, you have to tell me, where we need to cut back in order to be able to do what we can do. And he showed me the set, and I went, we have to do this. I said, physically we can do this. Whether we have the money to do it is another question, but that's John David's problem. So
somebody else gets to figure that part out.
So, and we did it. And it was a great show and great set.
So you left off that you were a carpenter in Soho as the last place, and you would do some designs and then they would kind of throw them out.
Yeah, it was.
So you decided on something next.
So it was a fluke. I didn't say, oh, I want to be a firefighter. That wasn't the way it worked out. I mean, we lived in the Lower East Side at Manhattan when we first moved out there, and a fifth floor walk up with the shower next to the kitchen sink, and the bathroom was just the toilet. And the floors sloped like this. Really great place. So we moved out to Queens so we could have a real bathroom and a real bedroom. And
Going upscale.
yeah, upscale, right?
Yep.
I could actually park the car on the street instead of in New Jersey. And so one night, February, there's a manhole fire in front of our apartment. It's like 9 o'clock at night, and fire department shows up, you know, lights and sirens, and they check things out and check the properties, and then they leave. I'm like, what? Except for one guy. They leave what they call the BOP, the junior firefighter, there to guard the manhole and wait for the utility company to come. It's like, wow. It's like 10 degrees out. This guy's standing there. And I'm, you know, not one to miss an opportunity to talk to somebody. I go out and said, what's up? You know, you want a cup of coffee or anything? He's like, sure. So I make coffee, go out, talk to him.
Yep.
And he had just gotten hired on the fire department. He used to be an accountant for Hasbro Toys, loved it, said it's the greatest job in the world. It's like, oh, cool. And he says, and the filing to take the next test is this 2 weeks.
So his greatest job was not being an accountant, it was being a firefighter.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, clear that up.
Yeah, we don't want to make that mistake.
Yeah, no.
Particularly for someone who's an accountant.
Oh, sorry. So, and he still was an accountant on the side. So, you know, he had the best of both worlds. But the filing for the test, so they open a filing for 2 weeks for a test that they give once every 4 years. And the filing was that 2 weeks. And you had to file for the test before your 29th birthday. I was 28. And it was that 2 weeks. So I was like, So I'm thinking about it all night long. And the next morning I get out the phone book. Now, you know, New York telephone book. This is before the internet, by the way. New York telephone book, and they had the blue pages. And in the blue pages were the municipal phone numbers, you know, city agencies. And I'm looking through.
I remember the phone books. I got it.
Right. So the blue pages, I'm looking through. I find a phone number for the fire department. I called it up. You know, 1987, New York City. Chances of actually talking to a human being are pretty slim. So you figure it's going to either ring or they're going to transfer me. Guy picks up on a second ring. He says, what can I do, or how can I help you? I said, well, I'm looking for an application for the firefighter's exam. He says, what's your address? I'll mail it to you. Right, sure. He does. I get it in the mail, fill it out, send it off, hang on to that phone number, call it up every once in a while. And one time I called up, and I asked him, I said, anything on the firefighter's exam? He says, well, anything that we know will be in the chief newspaper. It's a civil service newspaper. So I said, all right. So it comes out on Tuesday, it's a Wednesday. Go up to the newsstand, pick up the chief newspaper, come home, look through it. Nothing on the firefighter's exam. But on the back page that nobody ever looks at, there's a little ad about that big. Preparation class for the New York City firefighter's exam starts that night in Queens. It's like, okay, $100, 10 classes, off I go to the class. And, you know, I tell my wife, I said, yeah, I'm thinking about being a firefighter. She's like, what?
She didn't know yet?
We've been married for 5 years already. She's like, where did this come from? I said, I don't know, thinking about something different. I said, I don't know if it's going to work. We'll just see what happens. All right. So I go off. I take the class. The retired deputy chief that runs the class, it's his own business, tells us start reading anything and run. Because the written test is mostly reading comprehension. Now, I wasn't a big reader in college. I read what I had to, but I wasn't a big reader.
That's good preparation for college, too, though.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's a good preparation for life. And so I started reading, and I've been a pretty voracious reader since then. I usually have like 3 books going at the same time, plus an audio book in the car for the commute. And start running. And then within, I don't know, a month, we get a thing to join a gym in our neighborhood for $59 a year for 3 years.
In New York?
In New York.
Uh-huh. Did it have a roof?
It had a roof.
Uh-huh.
It had a Stairmaster. It had, you know, so I would go and work out and, you know, just do.
That sounds amazing in New York for 1987. Even.
Yeah. It was. It was like, how does this happen? So the test, we had 48,000 people apply to take the test. And the test is two parts, a written test, 100 questions, and a physical test. The physical test at the time was an obstacle course that was timed, and you had to do it, the faster you did it, the better your score. So I get a 99 in a written test. And so 48,000 people driving in, flying in, training in to New York City to take the written test on one day in high schools across the city. So you have to figure out what school you're going to, how to get there, whether you have to park, literally people flying from California to take the test.
And then navigating New York
Right.
traffic and everything else, right?
Yeah, I walked 3 blocks to take the test. I was like, okay, take the test, get a 99. Then I'm preparing for the written test, or the physical test, which was held at the Coliseum in Columbus Circle in Manhattan, which is now the Time Warner buildings in Columbus Circle. And it gets postponed. I get postponed 3 times. I end up taking it on the last day that they give it. December 7th was the day that I took it. A day that will live in infamy, for me too. So, and get 100. 16,000 of the 48,000 people actually passed the test, and I was number 306 on the list. And so I got sworn in a second class in August of 1990.
Of the 16,000 people, how many do they take?
I don't remember how many they did then, but I do know that, so I ran probationary firefighter school for the fire department for 2 years, and I know that the current list, is a written test and a pass-fail physical test, and if you don't score 100 or better with preference points,
No chance?
no chance on this list. So last list, 98, maybe.
So for that whole year, the stars just aligned
Incredible.
the right way.
Yes.
Did you buy lottery tickets that year?
I should have, but
You can't go back in time?
if I had, I might not be here. So,
Well,
I might have won.
we're glad you are.
yes.
So you became a junior firefighter.
Yep.
That presumably the first responsibility you have is to guard manhole covers.
Exactly, yes. Which I was looking forward to, especially when it's 10 degrees out. It's what I love.
So at some point then you start running into skyscrapers and subways and everything else. How long did you do that part?
Well, so I get assigned to Engine 260 in Long Island City, Queens. It was 1.5 miles from my apartment, and a single engine company, great reputation, really great senior firefighters. And we joke about guarding the manhole, but day one, you're going into the fire. You're going into the building. So it was 2 weeks or so before I went to my first fire. And everybody remembers their first fire, which I do. It was like at 6:30 in the morning, and it was a second floor kitchen. Not much fire, but seemed like a lot, for me. So I was there for 4 years, and then my wife was pregnant, and we bought a house in Westchester. And if I stayed there, I was going to have to pay the tolls to come across the Triborough Bridge every time. So I transferred up to the top of Manhattan, and I went up to 95 engine and 36 truck, top of Manhattan. But let me go back. The firehouse, every firehouse has kind of their, their name of what they are. Like when 23 engine is the Lion's Den, 260 engine were the Smurfs, which is why my email address is still Smurf Dave. So from 30 years ago.
So you went up to the upper part of Manhattan.
Yep. So
How long did you stay there?
I was there, so I was in 95 engine for 4 years, and then I took the lieutenant's test. It's a promotion test, same type as the entrance exam, except it's given every 4 years, but it's a stack of books about the size of this table down to the ground. Study all of that. We're going to give you 100 questions out of that information. And most people study for about 2 years.
Sounds like the bar exam for me.
Yeah. I don't know what the bar exam is like,
It's
but
the same thing.
okay. Yeah.
You get a big stack of stuff.
Yeah, and they ask you 100 questions, and you just hope you study the right things. So I studied for that and did okay. Wasn't sure if they were going to get to me, but then I transferred over to the truck. So the engine companies are the fire companies that have the fire hose and they go in and put the fire out, and the truck companies have the ladders and they go in and search, find the fire, rescue people. There's a whole back and forth between engine companies and truck companies, because engine firefighters say, well, we're the firefighters, you just help us. So, truckies are firefighters' helpers. But,
There's something like that with the Navy and the Marines too,
absolutely,
I think, right?
Absolutely, right. So anyway, I went to the truck company and I was in 36 truck on September 11th, when that happened.
So going back a little bit, so when you and I met before,
Yeah.
it was on Randall's Island,
Yeah, I brought you out to the fire academy. Yeah.
out to the fire academy.
Yeah.
So while you were there,
Yep.
you were helping to train the firefighters
Yep.
in New York. So how many firefighters in New York, and what was your responsibility when you were on Randall's Island?
Yeah, so I was the chief of of probationary fire school, which is just one facet of the fire academy. There's a chief in charge of the fire academy, and then there's a chief in charge of training above him or her. But I was just one part of the fire academy, one of the larger parts of the fire academy. But we would swear in 325 probationary firefighters every 6 months. So in the 2 years I ran Proby School, I helped train 1,200 firefighters, a little over 1,200 firefighters.
How long what kind of course do they go
They're
through?
in for 18 weeks, and they start, it's physical training and practical skills. So they're stretching fire hose and searching and going into burning buildings, and mass confidence course and running and all kinds of other stuff. And then sitting in the classroom for lectures.
So when I was there, you showed me around,
Yep.
and we were able to see a whole bunch of different set designs.
Mm-hmm.
So that,
Yeah.
right, we're on Shanklin Stage, right?
Yeah.
But, everything from skyscrapers to subways and everything in between, right?
Yeah.
So how do you get firefighters ready to?
Train like you fight, fight like you train.
Yes, exactly.
And we try and make it as realistic as possible, because every time we put a probationary firefighter or any firefighter into a training situation, it creates a memory slide for them, so that if they're faced with that situation in real life, they go back through those memory slides in that risk-based situation where you have to remember things and make decisions in a split second. That's how they do it. And so we try and create those as real a situation as possible scenario. Real smoke, real fire, real yelling and screaming. We may have victims that are in there screaming, help me, save me. And even in probationary firefighter school, we create a lot of stress. It's intentional, because firefighters have to be able to make decisions in stressful situations. And they can't just, when it becomes stressful, say, nobody wants them just to say, nope, I'm done. It's too stressful, I can't do this. No, we need you to go in and do this job. And so through Proby School, we create stress. And we have to make sure that we're creating that stress for that specific reason, not just to be abusive, which is important, but make sure that they understand that it's going to be a stressful situation. And then we'll talk to them about that and then do it again.
So the last thing that we did when I was there was, I think probably very intentionally on your part, is that you showed me the tribute to the firefighters from 9/11.
Yes.
So you were part of the FDNY during 9/11.
Yeah.
Tell me about your experience and kind of how that shaped you.
Well, it's kind of interesting, because a friend of mine, he wrote a paper on residue, which is pretty dynamic. And interestingly enough, the thought for this paper on residue came from a conversation with an actor. And how the actor was telling him about when you play a character, you have to figure out how to get rid of that character. the residue of that character in order to do the next character. And he started thinking about it in terms of mission critical teams, or fire departments, NASA, SEALs, special operations, special forces, and the residue that we experience. And at first he's thinking, oh, this bad thing, this dark gray matter of residue is impacting people. And the actor, the actor was like, no, you're missing the point. It's not all bad. That first kiss is residue too. That first bite of a really great orange is residue. It's not good or bad, it just is. And he actually transitioned this concept or this thought process into residue. What we experience, what firefighters, what mission critical team people live through is a privilege. Because not everybody gets to do that, and not everybody can do that. And that's one of the things that we're kind of seeing now. Yes, we can train you to be a firefighter, but you may not have that skill set within you to be the firefighter. And 9/11 was obviously life-changing. The fact that I got promoted the week after to lieutenant, life-changing. And the residue that has lived on my soul, life-changing, but it has defined who I am. So I'm not who I am now if I don't have the privilege to go through that experience. I'm not saying I wouldn't be, that wouldn't be a good person too, but this is who I am. And that experience is part of who I am.
So the conversation about residue came from theater, which kind of circles back to here in Shanklin.
All the world's a stage.
Indeed. So some of the things that happened at the University of Evansville and all of the things that you've experienced, 9/11 and kind of the progression of your career in New York, how has all of those things affected how you think about leadership? Because I know you spend a lot of time thinking about it.
Yeah. It's interesting because Eric was talking about, we were having a conversation, and he was talking about when he was a student here, and we overlapped a little bit, and he remembers my leadership in the shop, which I didn't think about. And I may have been, had some leadership, in my early years in the fire department, my first 11 years, but I didn't really think about it until I got promoted to lieutenant. After September 11th, when during the speeches at our promotion ceremony on September 16th, when somebody said, "You are the future of this department. You will rebuild this department." And I took that as my mission, or part of that, I was going to be a part of that. And I look back and I realized that that was a time when I actually became an intentional student of leadership, where I started seeking out those leadership lessons and tried to learn those myself instead of somebody just handing me a book on leadership. And so the books that I read changed from Stephen King to things about leadership, and not necessarily just something that said Leadership 101 or this is how to be a leader, or but stories. And Stephen Covey Jr.'s book, The Speed of Trust, The Mission, the Men and Me by Peter Blabber, even The Curse of the Narrows, about the explosion of a ship in Halifax, Nova Scotia in 1917. On the leadership lessons, those minor little leadership lessons that changed the way that they handled that disaster, of which over 2,000 people were killed. So in the course of learning more and educating yourself more about leadership,
You mentioned a couple of books. What do you think? What was the most influential for you?
Most influential, well, certainly The Mission to Men and Me is a big one. I've handed that book out maybe a dozen times to other people. The Speed of Trust is another one that I think is, we have a trust account that is, it's either paying dividends or we're making withdrawals. The students have trust accounts with their professors. The professors have trust accounts with you. The university has a trust account with the public and the city of Evansville. And if you're not drawing dividends, you're making withdrawals. And you have to think about that trust account and how that relationship happens. We have trust accounts as we're driving down the highway with the car next to us. We trust that that person is going to be driving straight and true. When they go out of their lane, that's a withdrawal from the trust account. And we're going to deal with that a little differently. So, and that's, I think that a lot of, certainly within the fire service, there's a lot about trust. And we have to trust the person to be there. And if we can't do what we're going to do.
So, since I saw you on Randall's Island, so what's been the progression since then? What are you up to now?
So, I spent, after I finished as the chief of probe school, I think when you came, I was actually executive officer to chief of training.
You were, correct.
And then he got promoted to chief of operations. And when he got promoted, he said, come on, we're going to headquarters. And it's like, okay, because the chief of operations is the #2 uniform member in the department. We have a tremendous relationship built on trust and respect. And so when he went, I went. And so I've been working with him since March of 2019 at headquarters.
And so at headquarters, what's kind of the scope of the things that you do now? Undefined.
Yeah, that's one of the things.
It's the last line all the time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
All those duties as assigned.
Yeah, do it all. No, it's interesting because my mission, or what I feel my mission as the executive officer to the chief of operations, is to keep the minutia off of his plate so that he doesn't have to deal with some of the stuff. Provide him appropriate feedback and a different perspective on a situation so that he can have better situational awareness, and to be honest with him on what I think. It may be different than what he thinks. He has 40 years of experience and from some really great companies. I have different experience, mostly in Manhattan. And I have a different outlook on things. He got sworn in, he was 21 and 1 month, and you can't get sworn in before your 21st birthday. As soon as he could, he got into the fire department. I was 31, so it was a different perspective. So I try and give him honest feedback on my feelings, or what I think. He'll come in and ask me every once in a while. But I'm also part of the team of other chiefs in operations that, they'll come to me and they'll say, what do you think, or can you do this? And I try and facilitate as much stuff as I can.
So is FDNY the largest fire department in the United States?
Largest fire department in the United States. We have 10,000 firefighters and fire officers.
That cover 10 million people or so?
What is it, 8.7 million, I think, is in the city right now.
Yes.
So 5 boroughs, 8.7 million people. 10,000 firefighters, fire officers, 4,400 EMT paramedics and EMS officers, and 2,000 civilian employees.
So this is kind of coming back to Evansville is full circle.
Yeah.
Right? Being back on Shanklin stage. You just spent some time with the theater students.
Yeah.
Right? How was that, reconnecting with not only Shanklin stage, but the students in theater?
Well, it's interesting because we did a webinar, which is a little different than I've experienced. I love to have, personal interaction, but we're in different times. it'll be, I hope that what I was able to say to them means something and has some impact on who they're going to be tomorrow. But that's to be defined because, you know, a webinar, it's hard to get feedback. You know, that's the beautiful thing about live theater is that you get that instant feedback from the audience. And somehow Zoom just doesn't quite cut it. But I love to be able to have that conversation with the students, you know, to, you know, give some thought to the last 40 years of my life and where it's gone and how this place has impacted me, and how they can, you know, some, I don't know, hope how they experience their 4 years, to embrace as much as they can, to trust the people that they're working with, to trust their professors, that they have their best interest in, you know, in their heart. And so it was one of the things that I said when I was asked to come and speak. I said I would love to be able to speak to the students at some point.
Well, I'm glad that happened. And, you know, some things have evolved and changed.
Yeah.
Some things haven't, having gone to all of the plays that
Yeah.
have been on Shanklin since I've been here.
Yeah.
Whether cabaret or something else,
Right.
they're still really fantastic.
Yeah.
And I understand you couldn't talk to some of them tonight because they're in dress rehearsal
Oh yeah. Right.
for kind of the new version.
The new version.
The
of how
COVID
we-
version.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of Shanklin Theater.
Right.
Which
right.
is they're gonna do 6 plays this year on Zoom.
Which is exciting. You know, and that's the resilience and the ability to adapt to the situation, and that's that living in the moment. And how do we address this? You know, we'll worry about 6 months from now when we get there, because I did say to him, I said I could pretty much guarantee I could have asked every one of you 6 months ago where you thought you'd be in 6 months. This would not be it.
For no one.
For nobody.
Including me.
Nobody could have written
Including
this
me.
down. This is what's going to happen. We're going to be walking around with masks, staying 6 feet away from each other, and we'll have to do everything on computers, not coming out. So we don't know where we're going to be in 6 months. We do know that we're going to be here for however much longer we're going to have this great conversation. And then tomorrow we'll do what we do. We'll set those horizons that we can get to, and we'll worry about the ones we can't see when we can start to see them.
So one of the things that you were describing when you were talking about leadership are withdrawals and deposits.
Yeah.
And so the people that are watching the conversation are our alumni and friends.
Yeah.
So you've been an alumni for 40 years.
Yep.
What's your advice about how to stay connected with the university?
Come back. Come back.
I agree.
You know, and it's great to see the changes. It's great to see the things that are the same. You know, just walking up to Hyde Hall and looking up and seeing the sign, Shanklin Theater, it was like, look at that. You know, being here and wondering if Buddy the Ghost is somehow looking down on us, you know.
That's got to be a different story that I don't know about.
Buddy the Ghost?
Yes.
Yeah, when I was here, there was a ghost. We called him Buddy, so I don't know if he's still around.
They didn't tell me in that interview process that there was a ghost on Shanklin stage.
Well, there's ghosts everywhere. With my firehouse, where I was a captain, we had 2 ghosts in my firehouse. It was a 1906 firehouse, so there was guaranteed to be a ghost in there. So.
Well, you're right. Hyde does look a lot different.
Yep.
Since you've been here, about a $8 or $9 million renovation.
Yep.
So that not a lot to Shanklin. Shanklin's been done a little bit before that.
Right.
And look, how does that look compared to what it did before?
Well, I know there's seats. You can sit in all the seats now, I think, because some of the seats were pretty beat up.
So we've upgraded.
Yes, absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely. So, but it feels, and I haven't been up into the grid, but we used to smack our head a lot when we were up there. So I think that may have changed. I think I almost fell out of that once, but.
Well, I'm glad that didn't happen, but
Yes,
that was also probably helpful training for you.
Great training. Don't do this again.
Or don't go up there again. Or climb into a building that's on fire.
Right. Yeah. Go into a burning building instead. That's safer. Much safer. So.
Well, lots of different ways that we can help do the training here at the University of Evansville.
Yeah.
So David, thank you so much for being a part of our university.
Yep, thank you. It's
You
a
know,
great place.
A university is only as good as its students, its faculty, and the people that are our graduates. And a lot of them make us proud, but especially you. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Good luck in New York.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
You too.